Okay, I'm getting started on this surface here, and I just want to show you what I've done. I've applied some Glad Press and Seal to the back of it because I've already painted the back of it black, and I will probably paint something else on the other side so that I have a reversible surface. And so I wanted to protect the paint that I've already put on here, so I just put some Glad Press and Seal. Now I've got a self-healing cutting mat here and a razor blade or cutting blade of some type, and I'm just going to go around the board itself, and then I'm going to remove all the excess paper so paint won't build up on that paper and possibly get around it. Alright, I'm going to start by base coating this piece, and I am going to use a 2-inch foam roller. I'm just going to dampen it in my water, squeeze out the excess water, and remove any extremely amount of water from my roller by squeezing it in a paper towel. Now I'm just going to load my roller. Now when you use a roller, paint's going to splatter, so just make sure you've got an apron or old clothes on. And we're just going to roll on 2 coats of bleached sand onto this. And we don't have to worry about our other side because we've got it protected with our Glad Press and Seal. So we are good to go here. So you just want to get complete coverage. Now on this surface, you could seal it with some multi-purpose sealer. You can mix it in with your first coat. I do that a lot, especially if I'm on, like pine or something like that, because it will just soak the paint right up into that wood, and the sealer will help block that from happening. Now this is masonite, so it doesn't have to have that preparation, but it's always good to get in the habit of doing that. So you just mix equal amounts in with your first base coat, and then the second base coat can just be the straight paint. So now I'm doing less and less pressure to smooth this first coat out. And this surface is available on my website. I have it in 2 sizes. So I'm going to get this coat dry, put a second coat on, then we're going to come back and do some image transfer. Alright, I've got 2 coats on this. It's completely dry. Now I'm just going to very lightly, with a very fine grit sanding pad, just lightly sand that. Make sure our surface is smooth. Wipe it off with a paper towel, make sure there's no dust on it. Alright, now we're going to get ready to put our paper on. So we want to prepare the surface first with the decoupage medium. So I'm just going to dump some out on my plate here. Get a little bit easier. You want to make sure when you dump it out on your plate that you wipe the lid off, the rim of the bottle off before you put the lid on it so the lid doesn't get stuck later. Okay, now we're just going to apply a generous amount of this decoupage medium. I'm using a 1-inch filbert wash brush. Want to move fairly quickly because I don't want it to start drying before I can get my paper on. We don't want it super thick, but we do want there to be enough for the paper to adhere well and the image to transfer onto here. Make sure you get all the way to your edges. I'm going to quickly wipe up my table here so that I don't stick my paper onto the table. Just missing it. Take a damp cloth, wipe that off. Okay, so we've got this ready. Alright, and this is the paper that we're going to use. You can use any image transfer paper that you want. This is one from creativeartslifestyle.com, and I'm not necessarily doing my design that has to do with Roman stuff, but this is the one that I liked the look of the background. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to hold it over here to the edge. I want to make sure that I'm going to be pretty straight. Move it up to the board. Keep my arm out of the camera so you can see. I'm going to lay it on the paper. I'm going to gently push across the paper. Okay, now this is where you'll want some kind of brayer. I don't necessarily have a brayer that is an actual brayer, and this corner does not feel very wet here, so apply a little more adhesive there. But this is a, it's actually a foam rolling pad thing that you would ink stamps with. So I like to use it because it's soft and I know it won't tear into my paper. And then I can just push the paper, try and get the wrinkles out. If they're in there, that's okay, because I may do some texturizing to this piece when we get done. I haven't quite decided. I never know when I'm designing exactly how the piece is going to end up looking. I just love the process of figuring out what I want for the background and then going from there. So it's a very fun process for me. So I'm just making sure that this is adhered on here. I've got some bubbles in here. I don't really want those bubbles, so I'm going to take my fingers and try and work those bubbles out a little bit. Smooth it out. And I want as much of this design to stick to this board as I can get. Okay, now we've got to let this get completely dry before we remove the paper off. So, ideally, you probably, if you've got time, let it dry overnight. You can put it under some fans or a blow dryer and speed up the process. But if you can let it dry overnight, that would be better. Make sure it has good adhesion. Okay, we're going to get it dry and then we're going to take the paper off. Okay, this is good and dry now, so we're going to start removing the paper off of here. I have got a pretty damp cloth here, and I am just going to start rubbing this paper off. I've got water here. If I need it, I can get some more water. You can do this with your hands as well, but it's pretty tiring on your hands. Where's my little spritzing bottle? I'm going to spritz this so I don't have to keep dipping my rag in water. So much fun to do this technique. And I'm not, oh man, wasn't dry there. That's okay, I'm going to add some texture crackle on the back of this. So I tell you what, before I remove any more, I'm going to go dry it a little bit. I want to make sure that that glue under there is completely dry. Okay, let's try this again. I'm going to spritz it. This time I'm going to start rubbing it with my fingers so that I can feel the paper. I think I was just rubbing too hard with the rag, which I like using the rag because if you're doing very many projects, your hands can get kind of sore. See, I removed it. I removed the image in two places there. So I'm just going to very gently rub around those areas so that I don't remove any more. And I also might not have gotten as much glue on there in that spot. So we're just going to keep rubbing, gently rubbing. You'll be able to tell when you've got it all off because the paper is white. And it still looks cloudy or like it's got a lot of white, and you haven't got all the paper quite off. I like using the rag because it removes it so much quicker, but see, I'm still just removing I must not got glue right there very good at all, but that's okay. I am going to texturize this a little bit. I really wanted the really old world look anyway. It's one of my favorite looks. Remember, this paper was kind of a yellowed paper, so it was already had a little bit of an old world look about it. You can see where we're getting down to where we need to be here. So you just keep rubbing at it and get it removed. I'm going to go off camera and finish this so that you don't have to sit there and watch me keep doing this. And if I come across any issues, I will be sure and turn the camera back on and let you know about them. Okay, I got all of my paper off. So as you can see, I have several places, get this on the camera shot, I have several places where I no longer have paper. Well, those are places where I didn't get very much glue on there, so the paper didn't have anything to stick to. So if you really want complete coverage, you've got to make sure that you get plenty of glue on there, or the decoupage medium, before you put the paper on. And really bray it down really good to get it to stick. I wanted an old world look, and I thought about adding some texture medium onto this, some texture crackle onto this, but I think I'm going to leave it just the way it is. I really like it just the way it is. So, but if this is not appealing to you, where a lot of it is missing in places, then just make sure you've got good coverage with your decoupage medium, and get your paper stuck down really, really good. Let it dry completely. Now, when you get the paper off, it should be a smooth surface just as if it just had paint on it. So just get it to that point. And when I felt like I got all of the paper off of it, but it still felt like there was some like on the surface, I just took my foam sanding pad and went over it and knocked off all the rest of the loose stuff that was still on there. So you know, then we've got it to this point, and like I said, you can leave it this way, or you can, you know, go in and add some texture crackle. Or okay, now I want to draw a line on here. I'm going to make it kind of figure out where I want. See, we're not going to see a whole lot of this background, but I wanted it back in there just for a nice effect. I could reduce this drawing down some, but I think I'm going to leave it the size that it is. Make sure my line is straight. My mark on the line. Okay, I'm going to measure from side to side. That's about 2 inches there. I can tell I'm going to have to move it over, I think. This is the farthest point here. I'm going to have to move it over this way. I want to have it centered as best you can, right on your lines. Okay, so I'm 2 and, let's see, 5/8. And from here I am 1, 2, and 3/8, so just a little bit more. Line your marks up. Two and a half. That should make it just about right. It's still a little long on that side. Not too bad though, just a little bit. Okay, make sure it's on your marks there. And you want to take a piece of tape. Now normally I would, let me find my scissors here. I should have done this before I laid it down here. Cut a couple of holes in my paper here. Tape it down so it doesn't move. A hole in this side. I just pinch it together and cut a V. And then cut the V out. Doesn't really look like a V once you get the paper out of there, but alright. So we've got that ready, good to go. Now we're ready to transfer our pattern on, so I'm going to get that done so we can get busy painting. I just wanted to give a little tip as I am transferring this. The stems on the cherries, we probably won't transfer those right now because we don't want to have to try and paint around them. So really, you know, like this stem here, we won't transfer that stem either. We don't want to have to be painting around things. We can come back in and add all that stuff later. And I think I won't even add the cherries and the fruit in the bowl yet because I just like to paint the stuff that's in the background first and then add the pattern for the stuff that's in the front. I just think that makes it a little bit easier when you're painting. So we're just going to base the bowl in, or outline the bowl here. Okay, and then we're going to put the, I think right now we're just going to concentrate on the pears and the bowl. Okay, we're going to add all the cherries and everything else back in a little bit. But so right now you're just going to transfer the pears and the bowl onto your piece, and we can go ahead and take the pattern off because we've got those transferred on. We've got our line down here so we know where we're going. Before we do any painting outside this way, we want to make sure we take those lines off that we drew on the sides, because once you put paint over them, they'll be set in the piece and be there forever. You can't get them out after that. So I'm going to get my paints gathered up so we can get started on this. Okay, we are ready to get going on this project here. We're going to start with the bowl here, and I want to base it in with bleach sand for our underneath coat on this. This is also the color that we put back here, so I'm just going to base it in with bleach sand to cover up that background there. I'm just using a 12 low Cornell flat brush. These brushes are available on my website. Now, if this is the first time you've done a video with me, I like to build my projects in layers. So I like to put the stuff in the background on first, and then I like to come in and put the stuff that's closer up in there. I'm just going to go ahead and put this down in here a little bit inside the bowl. We'll be shading all that down in there so we won't really see it. Keep your brush strokes smooth. I like to add a little bit of water to my paint to thin it down so I don't have such thick paint when I am putting my base coats on. This brush is getting a little ragged. I think I might need to replace it. Alright, so while that is drying, we are going to put some color on our pears. Now we're going to base them all in with moon yellow, but we're going to add some different colors and things onto these. But I want our base coat on them to be moon yellow. So I'm going to stay with this 12 flat. Let's see if I've got a little bit better one that's not quite as beat up on the ends. Go to a 1/2 inch flat brush here. There not a whole lot of difference between the two. A little bit wider. Let's see, this one's a little bit wider. It's a 1/2 inch. This one's a 12. So that 12 was getting a little ragged on the ends. I need to go and get me a new one out of the cabinet over there. Alright, so moon yellow. Now, with your graphite lines, you want to go right up next to them so that you can erase them or paint over them. Now, if you paint over them, they will become set in your project. So if it's not something that you want to have set in your project, like you're doing a little more sheer colors or something, then just paint right up to it. Now, if you go over it with dirty water, because there's a little bit of paint in water, it's still going to set it. So you won't be able to remove it. So just a couple of tips to keep in mind when you're dealing with graphite lines. Now, as you can see, I painted that one just up to this one and that one. I like to paint my areas separate so that I can keep them separate so that when I go to add details on here, I already know which pear is which. That will help keep me from coming back in and putting my graphite lines. And if I just went in here and just painted all this yellow, I would have to go back in and put all my graphite lines in. If that's the way that you like to paint, that's perfectly fine. But if I can eliminate a step, I like to get the base coating done so that I can get on to the more fun stuff of, you know, adding all the details. Just some smooth coats. A little bit of water in my paint. If I feel like my paint is not brushing on nicely or my brush is dragging, I'm going to go pick up a little bit of water in my brush. Blend it in with my paint so that, you know, it will thin it down a little bit so it will give me smooth coats. Now I got almost too much water that time. So I just went and wiped my brush on the paper towel to remove the excess water out. And then right back over here to continue painting. I love painting fruit. I love painting just about everything. I'm not really good at some things yet, but like animals, can't really paint animals very well. That's something that I plan on working on for the year and improving on. Done with our base coats here. Well, with our initial base coats. So I picked these colors because I knew that they would cover up the design in that paper well enough for us not to have to worry about that. Alright, I'm going to come back and put a second coat of bleached sand on here. Then we're going to let all this dry and come back and start building on top of it. I'll see when the pears dry. I may want to go back in and add a second coat on. I probably will. I normally do add 2 coats of base coat on before I start adding any kind of detail on my projects. Just because I want to make sure my coats are nice and smooth. Everything's filled in. No gaps. Oops, you'd probably like to be on camera for that, wouldn't you? You got to yell at me louder than that. I could barely hear you. Okay, this is a little spot here. I should just go to a smaller brush. You know, that would be the logical thing to do here. But I'm going to push through and just get up on the toe of this one. Too much paint, so let me wipe that off. It's getting kind of thick right there. Alright, okay, I'm going to get this dry, get my second coat on my pears, and then we are going to come back and work on the bowl. Now, I wanted to let you know that when you thin your light colors of paint, go into your clean water. If you go into your dirty water, you're just going to add that color right into your light paint. So then it will completely change the color of your paint. So always when you're thinning down your light colors of paint, go into your clean water. Alright, let me get those second coats on. Okay, everything's dry now. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit. We're going to work on the bowl here. I'm going to try something completely different that I've never done before, so it may or may not work out. If I don't like it, I'll just base coat right back over it and we'll just start all over. Alright, so I've got on my palette Cool White, Blue Harbor, and soft black. And we're going to kind of dirty up and age this bowl a little bit. My main color that I want the bowl to be is the cool white. So, take some of that water out of my brush. I am using a 10 filbert, and I may eventually go down to a 6. We'll see. So I'm just going to start just kind of roughly tapping some of this in here. Okay, while it's wet, I'm going to pick up a little bit of Blue Harbor. A little bit too much on my brush, so I just went and wiped it off. I'm just going to kind of blend that in, pick up a little bit more cool white. Come up to the edges here. More cool white. I don't want the blue to take over. This is kind of a slapping technique. Okay, I'm going to spritz some water on my palette over here so that I can dip into water as I need it. So I've just got a travel misting bottle. I'm just going to mist my palette with water. As I need more water in my brush, instead of going into my water basin, I'm just going to go right there and get it. Okay, I want to get a tiny little bit soft black. I'm going to put some of that in there. Okay, I just went and wiped my brush off. Now I'm loading it back up with the cool white. Okay, I just want to kind of blend that a little bit. Wiping my brush off because I don't want that soft black to take over the whole bowl. We're just kind of aging it up here and going to make it look old. Need a little water. My brush was dragging there. We'll probably do this a couple of times. Get it where it looks nice and a little more weathered. So I'm going to take a little bit of Blue Harbor and soft black and mix them together. Kind of dirty up that blue a little bit. Get a little bit of water on my brush. Okay, I'm going to come back over here. I want to make sure that's dry before I start painting in it, because if it's not, it's just going to lift the paint up. But that blue is a little bit too bright, so I just went and wiped the excess paint. I put some of the paint down, then I went and wiped the excess paint off my brush. Okay, now I'm going to wipe it off again, pick up the cool white. Now you could just go in and do the shading and all that stuff, but I wanted to try something a little bit different. Picking up cool white because I just wanted to try something different, something a little more on the loose side where you don't have to, you know, if you're somebody who has a hard time with the floating and stuff, then we can do it this way and get our shading and stuff in there. So we'll have to add some up in here. I'm going to go to my smaller filbert here in just a second. A little bit of black, soft black, put that in there, wipe it off, pick up cool white and blend it out. Okay, wipe it off. It was starting to blend too much with the cool white, so I just wiped it off, just removed that excess paint off my brush. Okay, now I'm going to let this area of the bowl dry because it's starting to get pretty filled up with paint, and I don't want it to start removing. I'm going to go get my smaller brush, smaller filbert, which is a 6. Okay, I'm going to take my cool white, make sure I have all the water off my ferrule there. A little space here that needs some on it. Alright, let's put some cool white in here. Okay, we will not need near as much paint here, so I just got a teeny tiny little drop of soft black. I'm just going to kind of work that in right there. After I put the soft black down, I went and wiped my brush off. A little bit of blue. Wiped it off. Now with the soft black, I wiped it off, then I went back and blended it. So now with the blue, I wiped off the excess and I picked up cool white. Now I'm just going to blend these all together right in here. And we'll see how this is going to look. We may, after it gets all dry, we may just come back and just do your typical floating and shading and all of that good stuff. Okay, I want the edge of the bowl to be a dark color. So I'm going to get a number 1 round brush. And I think I want it to be lamp black, which is going to be a stark color. So I will try it. If I don't like it, I will paint back over it with soft black. Now you can go in and put your pattern line back on. We're just going to go, well, let me look at my pattern because this comes from around here. I'm just going to, oops, too much paint on my brush there. This is just a number 1 round. Just follow your bowl shape. Try and keep a straight line, not like me, where I'm not keeping a straight line at all. You want the bowl to look old. I don't want it to look dented up, but, you know, we'll put rust and stuff on this here in a little bit. We're really going to age this up. Take your time. Remember to breathe. Okay, that's a good beginning for our bowl right there. Okay, so I'm going to let the bowl dry because it's got quite a little bit of paint on it. And we're going to go do some stuff on the pears. I think I'm going to start with some burnt sienna. And we're going to use our curved flat brush. I've got soft black here. So you're going to want a 10-0 liner, and I think we'll go with a 12 curved flat. Wake your brush up, get it full of water, wake it up. They won't work well for you if they are not woke up. So you have to wake them up. That gets the brush nice and conditioned, and then it's going to be ready to go for you. So just fill it completely up and then lay it on your paper towel. So I filled it completely full of water, and then I just lay it on my paper towel and let the excess water come out of it. So it's not too awful full. I just laid my paper towel on my paint. That's not good. Okay, we're going to start with some burnt sienna here. So I'm going to load my brush like this. I've got my brush damp from just waking it up, so I'm picking up on the toe. You see how I'm pushing the brush down? That's going to get the paint up the bristles. I go back like this. I generally always, unless I've mixed something here and can't get next to my paint, I generally always go next to the paint that I'm loading with, so I don't have to go so far to carry the paint in my brush. Okay, now the harder that I push, the more it will get paint up in there. Okay, and if you need it farther across the bristles, like a wider float, then you just pick up more. Pick your brush up where it's really deep in the paint, and then it will start pushing that paint as you load it across the brush. Now, if you get paint more than halfway across your bristles, might as well wash it out and start all over, because then you'll just be base coating. You will not be floating then. Okay? Now when I float, I like to use plenty of water in my brush. So you see it's pretty wet right there, but it's a very soft gradation of color as well. And that's what I like. That's the way that I like to float. But if you have a technique that you like to use, then I want you to use that. Okay, I'm just going to lay the brush barely on the paper towel and let the excess water get out of the brush. And have a mop brush handy. I never, ever, ever float without having a mop brush handy. So we're going to go around this one here. Okay, I'm going to mop that to soften it. And then we will come back and do that again. So I went and picked up a little drop of water on the curved edge of the brush right there. Now I just went up to the spot where I loaded and put a little bit more paint in there. And we'll go around on this side. Of this pear. Okay, and then just mop that. Mop, mop, mop. Now to clean your mop, you'll go to a damp place on your paper towel and clean the paint out, and then a dry place and dry it. You use your mop brush dry, and there it's cleaned out. Okay, just turn in here. Alright, another drop of water on the curved side. Load back up where I was right there, where I had my initial loading. Okay, and we're going to go around this side of the pear. Walk that out a little bit. Now this time I'm going to go in the paint, because that float got a little bit darker than I wanted. So I went into the paint so that I could remove some of that paint. Okay, that's the only time you want to go into the paint. So you see I have paint in my brush, so I'm going to go clean it out on the wet spot and then dry it on a dry spot. And there we go. Still got a little bit in it, but I got the majority of it out there. Okay, another water drop, loading right here in this spot. If your paint starts getting dry, you might have to move to a different spot. Okay, we're going to do this one over here. I don't have enough water in my brush. You see how draggy that is? Not near enough water. Okay, here we go. Lay your brush flat, soft pressure. You don't have to push hard. You just want to keep that pressure soft. I'm going to go into the paint because I got it a little dark on that edge there, and I didn't want that dark. So you see how that removed that and just took it right back down. Okay, let's go to the bottom. Now this pear down here, it's going to have its little stem thing. Not exactly where I wanted that to be, so I'll erase that and try that again. It's got its little dimple thing right there. So I'll just leave that pencil line on there for you. Now you can go to a much smaller brush now for this. We're just going to put some of that in there. I'm going to pull it out with the water end of my brush to kind of soften it. Okay, and we'll just let that dry down in there for now. I'm going to put a little bit down here, but we will come back and shade this with something darker in a little bit. But I want to put a little bit of it on this pear right here. Okay, that was a pretty dry little wash. It didn't have a lot of paint in the brush at all. You can see how much lighter that is than everything else. Okay, so we've got a good start to our shading right there. I think I will go ahead while I'm thinking about it and put a little bit down here. Not too much. A little bit more than that, I think, though. Okay, I just walked it up a little bit. Now I'm just going to mop, mop, mop. And I will put a little bit over here as well. Now this pear is coming up and around like that, so we'll go around that pear. Okay, and we will mop that. You always want to mop in the water section, not in the paint, unless you're going to remove the paint, like those couple times that I did where I got the paint a little dark. So I want to bring this up here a little bit. And then mop that whole thing to soften it. Okay. That must not have been quite dry enough. So I'm going to just dampen that very gently, because if I put too much on there, it's just going to take that paint off. And then I got to work at it all over again. Okay. We'll just leave that for now. It's not quite making me too happy, but we'll work at it. We'll fix it. Alright, let's put a little bit down here. Just on this edge down here. I don't really know what kind of pears these are. I don't really know much about pears. So I'm just kind of winging it along here. Okay, so I have to say on the bowl, I'm not particularly liking how that dried up. So let me go in and put a little bit of cool white in there. Oops. And I think I will just base coat that back down, soften it down a little bit with some cool white. And then I'll come back in and float it. So I told you that was a technique I was trying. And if you like the way it turned out, then you can just keep it that way. This is pretty thin paint. It's not, because I'm basically just putting a thin coat on here. I'm not going to be able to cover up all of this completely with cool white, but that's okay, because we're going to come back and do our floating and stuff in here, our shading. Over here. Not too much. Okay, what I do with my mop brush, I'm going to gently mop that. Just kind of blend those brush strokes a little bit so they're not quite so harsh on there. Barely, barely, barely tapping into that paint, because I don't want to remove it and dig a big hole in it. Okay. Alright, I want to put some little dots on these pears. I'm going to do that with the burnt sienna and some soft black. So first we'll do some burnt sienna ones. So I just thinned my paint down. Let me show you how I did that. I just dipped into my water, got some paint, pulled it out, thinned it down, inky consistency. Okay. Then I always wash my brush out because it's full of paint and water, and sure as you leave it full of paint and water, you're just going to create a big mess on there. So then I just load it. And now I'm just going to put some character into these pears. Just here, there, and everywhere. Everywhere you think the pear needs some character in it. Okay, it doesn't have to be just in that shadow area that we created. I keep laying my arm in water here. Wipe that up. Just know I'm going to transfer it over here and have a big old blob of water. Okay, just pick and choose choose where you want your little freckles. I call them pear freckles, but wherever you want them to be, you just put them on there. And they don't have to be teeny tiny little dots. I mean, you can create a little bit more, you know, with them. You know, some little fatter areas. I just touched that back with my finger because those were a little dark right there in that center, and I didn't quite care for it. Okay, I'm going to put some down here in this area. Put some coming out from it, just little dots. All of the pears. Okay, so you can have as little or as much as you'd like on there. I would say less is better. Alright, now let's thin down our soft black the exact same way we did that burnt sienna. Clean your brush, dry it off, and we're going to create some of these in here. Some little darker ones. You won't need as many as these. As many of these. Okay, and they don't have to be every place that you put the others. This is just a... I'm going to put some down here. Just wherever you think needs to be a little bit darker. Okay. I'll put a couple more down here. Okay, I think that's looking pretty good on those pears. I need to get me a bright yellow. Okay, I've got me a little lighter yellow here. We're going to go with some cad yellow. See how we like that. Go back into my 12 curve flat. Load it the same way you loaded that burnt sienna. We're going to brighten up these pears a little bit. Create our brighter side on these pears. We're just going to go right over those dots that we just put on there because that's not going to hurt a thing. Cad yellow is all I'm using right here. Okay, just kind of walk that over a little bit. Soften that edge there. You can use your mop brush and mop any place you think you want to. Okay, I'm just creating some high spots on these pears. So I'm going to get it here. Need some more water so I can move my paint. Okay, come down that side a little bit. Here, top of that. here. Okay, now we want some antique gold. Okay, and I'm going to go to my, I think I'm going to go to my filbert brush. See how this works. Still had some paint in it there. I didn't clean it out very good. Okay, and I want to create a little bit lighter color. I'm still going to just put it on the side as if I was floating. But I want to thin it down, have it more like a wash or a glaze on there. Okay. Now I want to just wash this on here. And the rest of the pear. Use my mop brush. I want these pears to stay more on the golden side. Shading there. This one, let's get it on this side. I could have just stayed with the curved flat to do this. Okay, I got a lot of water and stuff on that one, so I'm going to mop everywhere on that one. Looking like some good tasting pears here. Okay, I'm going to put this one all over in this section. Just kind of slip slap blend it in there. I'd like it to be all on this edge as well. This one will be all on the side. I want them to be more like golden pears. Okay, we're getting a nice start to those pears. Okay, I think I want to intensify my burnt sienna on my pears. I want to keep this pretty thin. So I've created a thin wash. But I'm still going to do floating, so I'm still just going to keep it on that one edge of the brush. Okay, I think I want to had too much water, so I went and wiped my brush on my paper towel. I think I want to darken these up just a little bit. Push it down in that V. These will be more like some of those brown pears. I don't know what pears are called what, barley pears. I don't really know. So all you pear connoisseurs out there can let me know what kind of pears these are, because or if they even look like a pear. They may not even look anything like a pear you buy at the store, but I know there are some pears that kind of look a little brown, and so that's kind of the look I was going for here. I had to go get a little bit more water because my paint was dry right there. Okay, I'm going to mop into the paint there and then bring it out into that water area. Gently blend that. When you run out of water, drops on your palette, just go spray it and get some more on there. Definitely need more water there. Definitely was dragging. Okay, that's pretty choppy, but look what the mop brush does. Oh, just softens that out. Makes it look beautiful. Clean your mop brush. Alright, let me get some more water on my palette here. A little more on my brush. I want to make sure I've got a good amount of water. Remember, you lay your brush flat, soft pressure. Just work it around there. Walk it out, a little more water. I just went and picked up a drop very quickly so I could continue walking that out while the paint was still damp. Okay, I'm going into the paint, mopping. It might sound like I'm pouncing really hard, but I am just barely pouncing in that paint. I don't want to remove it, but I do want to gently blend it. Now this one's going to have to be repeated because it's not quite as dark as I want it to be. So let's go up here on this one. Okay, I'm going to walk this up into the center by creating a V. Going to very gently blend, soften, tap. So the water in your brush helps you move the paint where you want it. The mop brush will soften that paint and get that soft float that just makes it beautiful. Alright. That one's dry. Now how you can tell if it's dry, if it's cool to the touch, it's not dry. So I'm going to get a little bit more paint on my brush this time. So I can darken that. Walk it out a little farther. Mop, mop, mop. Now right there, I've got a little hard line right there. I could leave that because it gives the pear character, but I just don't like hard lines on my piece, so I'm just going to mop that right away. I softened that with the water edge of my brush. I just took it and gently rubbed that, and it dampened it, and then I mopped it real quick before it could dry. Oh, those pears are looking delish. Delicious. Okay, this one right here needs to be a little darker down in there. We're going to be adding some fruit in here, but I want this much darker down here. Go around the tip of that pear. I just want that a little bit darker. Gently soften. Clean the old mop brush. Okay, I'm going to darken this one as well. Now remember with this one, came across the bottom, and we just start creating a V. Walked it up into that pear. Okay, now we're going to mop, mop, mop. Soften, soften, soften. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Okay. I want to come back with the cad yellow. Clean my mop brush here. And add a little bit more. I think I will add a little bit of Snow White in there. to lighten that just a little bit. So I've got my cad yellow here. Here's my snow white. So I've got it on my brush already. So I'm just going to dip into the snow white and go and blend it here. Not quite light enough, so I'm going to dip in again. So it's 2. Well, let's do 3. It's still not light enough for me. Let's do 3 warm white to 1 cad yellow. I touched my paper towel with my brush to remove any excess water out of it. Now we're just going to come up here on these high places. A little bit too much paint there, so I just went and wiped it off. When I do that with my finger, I'm just softening that a little bit. And do a little water here. Laying my brush flat, giving soft pressure. To the whole thing. Very gently tap that. Okay. Here. Tap that and soften it. Mix a little bit more here. I just brush mix as I need it. One. But too much paint, so I just went and wiped it off. Okay, just kind of curved it around that shape of that pear. Now this one will have to have a little bit more paint to carry it. Bring it all the way up here, up onto the tip of this pear. I'm going to walk it in just a little bit. Now that was upside down for you, so I hope that you could understand what we were doing there. Okay, these two right here I think need to be a little bit lighter, so I'm going to get a little bit more white on my brush and lighten those up. Just a little bit. Just a wee tad bit. Okay, this one here. Take the mop brush. I'm kind of scooting that paint down on that pear with that mop brush. I want to keep that highlight on this one up here more. Okay, I'm taking the mop brush and just blending that out, softening it. I just have it a little bit more white in my mixed in there now. I'm not putting this all over the whole area that I did a while ago. I'm doing a smaller area, and you are highlighting. You want to make your areas smaller with each application. That's how you're gonna get your best highs and lows on your project and give it just a lot more depth. just kept that mostly at the top right there. And then this one I'm just going to keep at the top as well. Soften that. Okay, we're getting some good highs and lows on our pears now. Okay, before we go on, this pear right here, I did not like how the shape was turning out on this one. So as you can see, I've drawn in a little bit more defined shape that I like. So I'm going to take my moon yellow and a little bit of antique gold out. It's just about empty. Just a little bit, I don't need very much. And I'll go ahead and put a little bit of burnt sienna out, so I'll have those colors already. And we're going to start just by filling in that area with some moon yellow. Now I've drawn my line in pretty dark so that you can see it. So I'm going to try and not go over that line so that I can erase it when I'm done. So I'm just going to use a round brush and reshape the pear right here. Just going to kind of smooth that out and blend it down. Side here. Okay, I'm just going to blend that down just a little bit, soften it out with my finger. Okay. Okay, now while that's drying, I don't know how well you can see. Well, you can see a little bit here where I've drawn in with my chalk pencil some areas that I want to make a little bit more shading on. So we're going to start with some antique gold. I'm just going to use my curved flat brush. Just get a soft little float on there. It's going to be pretty soft, mostly thin down with water, so it's a washy float. I like to start out with a little bit more washy float because I don't know how dark I really want it to go yet. So I just want to almost like fill in that V area right there. And just kind of bring it over. Create a little dimple, I guess, in some of these pears. They all don't have to have it. You can just... Let's see, you need to flip the brush this way. You want the water edge on the outside. And the paint towards the middle. Just kind of softly blend that out. Pick up water drops off your palette as you need them. Okay, I'm going to do this one. It's a if you've done a back-to-back float, it's basically just a back-to-back float right there. Okay, and this one here I'm going to do it too as well. Back-to-back. Soften that a little bit. Okay, I'm not going to do that one because that one's got a more rounded shape to it. Okay, I want to intensify that, so I'm going to pick up a tiny little bit of, see, I just did antique gold, so let me get a little bit of antique gold on my brush. So I'm going to get antique gold and a little dot of burnt umber. Maybe another little dot of burnt umber. And I just want to intensify this a little bit. We want to continue to make it look like a V though. Get my mop brush out here and then I won't have to use my finger all the time. Of course that's probably already dry before I even got to that, but a little hard spot right there. Run that out a little bit. Okay, go up here to this one, back to back. Just darkening that little B there a little bit, using the water edge right there to pull that out. Just, whoa, just a little bit, throwing the mop brush around. Need more water on my brush. Mix a little bit more paint. It's probably 2 antique gold to 1 burnt umber. Soften that out. Water. Paint's not wanting to come off my brush or flow nicely, so I need more water. Going right into that paint that I put in there to soften that. I want this to be a little bit whiter down here, darker down here at this base. I want it to look like it's Alright, I'm going to let those dry right there before we go on. I'm going to put my next little coat of paint on this one that I changed. First I'm going to erase my graphite lines here because I know where my shape is now. A little bit more moon yellow. Blending that out. I'm going to dip into some water so I can soften that a little bit more. Just mopping in that edge that I ended on there. Kind of soften that. Okay, while that's drying, let's get our 6 curved flat. Actually, let's stay with a bigger curved flat. Let's stay with a 10. I want to deepen some of the shadows around these pears with some burnt umber and just a thin wash of it because I don't want it to overtake. We can come back and, you know, apply a deeper color in the darker places, but this is just to get us that one step deeper. I'm going to mop that. We'll probably come in with some soft black in the darkest areas, like down in the bowl, and maybe back in there it's a little more shadow back in there. This one here. Walk that out just a little bit. I think I'm going to put a little bit of this up here on this edge because that bowl is actually going to be shading that, putting a shadow on that just a little bit. So we don't want that to be quite so bright right there. Let me put a little bit of this down here in this deep area down in this pear. And we're going to go where the bowl is, on the pears right here. want to cover up all the light areas. And when we put the other fruit on, we'll have to go around them with some shading as well. That's kind of going to set those pears down in that bowl just a little bit. Now you can break this pattern down if you want. If you just want to create a bowl of pears, perfectly fine. You know, that's completely up to you. All right, I want to stay with this burnt umber, but I'm going to go to my 6 curve flat now. Okay, we're going to add our little place where our stem comes out on some of these. I have to go back and finish this one yet. So this one is turned back, so you can't see the place on that one. But this one here, look at my pattern so I can see it. It's got its little stem coming out right here. So we just want to, this is just burnt umber. You want to go almost straight paint. You want to have a little bit of water in your brush so that you can gently soften that. Okay, this one over here is going to have its stem coming out right here. This one will have its stem coming out right here, so I will have to finish that one. Okay, and then this one's just got a dimple thing right there where you can't really, you know, the stem's going to be coming out like right there in that dimple area. Okay, and let's just add a little bit of darkening right here at the base of this stem. Okay, I want to finish this one real quick. So let me get my burnt sienna. Wash of that. Well, let's see, I think I started with antique gold, didn't I? So let me get my antique gold and we'll start with a wash of that. Washy float. Keep it on this side. Pull it in. I think I started with antique gold. I'll have to go back and read my directions now. I probably added the antique gold after I put the highlight on, so I'm kind of doing it in reverse here. I'll put a little antique gold down here just because I want this to be a little more highlighted down here. I'll come back and brighten that because I want that, you know, to really look like it's up in there a little ways. Some white on my palette here. Okay, I want to make sure this is dry before I move on to my next step. So, just want to catch this pear up with the other pears. And I think while it's drying, I'm going to take my 10-0 liner with some inky burnt umber. And we're just going to pull out some little hairs down in here. Can't really see them too much yet. A little dot of antique gold on there. Maybe we can see those a little bit better. I have to go in with some soft black probably and add some. Okay, let's go into our burnt sienna. Work on this pear, finish it up. Okay, just kind of walk that out a little bit. I think I want to, this edge down here is a little rough, so I think I'm going to add a little bit more on this one and just try and soften that just a little bit. Really darken that. Any place you see where it needs just a little bit more of that burnt sienna to pull the color out just a little bit. Maybe not quite that dark. That was a little bit too dark. So I just took my mop brush and softened that back very quickly before it completely dried. Alright, let's add some little dots on some of these pears. I want to add another layer of dots, so I'm going to use burnt umber and burnt sienna and maybe some antique gold. This is how you get your depth in your piece, by layering these. You can just pick and choose where you want to add some. Right now I'm just using burnt umber. Have all these little character things, especially the longer they've been out in the air. Okay, let's try, I don't know if antique gold's going to show up. Let's go into our burnt sienna. And we'll add just a few more of these on top. Don't need too many. Alright, now I'm going to highlight on this pear here, and I'm going to use the moon yellow and white mixed together, I think. Actually, I used cad yellow, so let me get my cad yellow. Okay, so cad yellow and white. 1 cad yellow to 3 white, it looks like. Create a nice pale yellow. And we'll create our highlight over here on this one. It's going to be up on the top mostly. If you've put spots in there, don't worry about it. You just go right over it. That's how you are going to add that depth in there. Let me dry that, because I want to put a second highlight on there. I'm going to add just a touch more white to that yellow. And I will make my highlight a little bit smaller this time. Wiped my brush off because I had just a little bit too much paint on it. Keep it more at the top of that one. Gently mop it. I'm going to go ahead while I have this color and intensify the highlights on these. So I'm just going in the lightest areas right there. Just kind of mushing it around and kind of blending it, and then I'm taking my mop brush, softening it out. This one's brightest highlight's going to stay right there at the top of it. Okay. bit more. Okay, this one here is going to be its high spot right there. Just walk that out, and I'll soften it. Keep your paint pretty wet. Have plenty of water in your brush to move it. You don't want to have so much water in there that it fades it down to nothing, but you want to be able to move the paint. And I use the wet side of my brush when I'm wanting to move it. The water side is what I use to pull that paint down where I want it to go. And we're going to come back in a little bit and put a final bright highlight on these pears. Okay, I'm going to take a little bit of burnt umber on this one. I'm just going to darken down here a little bit. Mop that. I want to darken in here. With burnt umber still. And while I have that light color still mixed, I might add just a little bit more cad yellow to it. I want this right here to be a little bit lighter. Okay, that's going to be a high spot on that pear. And I think I want to add some of this highlight coming down this pear. So I'm just taking that really light cad yellow mix, doing like a back-to-back float down this pear, and then I'm just mopping in the whole area, creating a really good bright spot right there. I think I will do the same up here, the back-to-back float right there. Mop it. Okay. Okay, I'm going to get some soft black because I want to create my very deepest areas here. And then we're going to put our stem in. We'll probably come back later after we get the cherries and the blueberries and the raspberries all painted in and add touches of those colors into the pears. But for now, I'm going to leave them at those colors that they are, the yellow colors. Come back and add some colors later. Okay, I'm using my 10 curve flat. You can go to a 6 for this first step. I want to deepen right here. I will come back and do this again after I do the stem. After I paint the stem in there, but I want to create a little bit deeper area in there. Now our stem, we're going to paint it in. Use a small round brush, number 1 if I can find it. Number 1. Okay, we're going to use cocoa, and the pear stems are kind of fat. So I'm just going to create how well you can see that on the background yet. Okay, this one's going to curve this way. That one's coming off the turned pear, so we can't really see where it's coming from. Okay, now this one I forgot to put my spot in there, so let me take some burnt umber and put it up It's turned a little bit because we can see the bottom of it, so we don't need that to be too low down. I think I initially had it pretty low on my pattern. Darken this real quick. Okay, now while I have the same brush, I'm just going to dirty brush into some burnt umber. I'm going to pull that down from the top. Just kind of streak it down from the top. And we can add some greens in here, maybe. I don't know if I'm going to have any green on this project though. So if you have greens on your project, you can add some greens in here if you want. Okay, I'm going to clean my brush. And I'm going to go into some soft black. And I'm going to pull that up from the base into it. Okay, now I want to dip into some, I think I will streak some antique gold, see how that looks first. Has a little bit of a highlight on here. I think I'll go into the moon yellow. It to be a little brighter. I'm just using a little bit on here. Okay, just a quick little highlight on there. Just a little streak. Okay. Now we want to take our 6 curve flat and straight paint with the soft black. And we just want to make sure we're shaded good at the bases where it goes in. So I'm just shading right there at the base. I don't know how well this is translating on the camera, but just right there. I just want to make sure that that deep area right there where the stem goes in stays a deep dark area. Just going in that little C, floated C, and then walking it up just a little bit. I'll put a little bit just down here. Pull that out just a little bit. And I want to take my 10-0 liner. To add some longer grassy things coming out of the base down here. So just some stem things, and then I'm going to go into some moon yellow. Highlight some of those. Not too much. I just want you to be able to see them. Okay, I'm going to dry that. And then I'm going to repeat the shading up in there with soft black just right there in that area. Just right here. And really set those back up in there, okay? Alright, the last thing we're going to do on these pears for now is take a float of soft black. And we're going to keep this pretty tight little float here. We want to go into these really dark areas. Just deepen those. Some soft black. So like here, I feel like this area right here would be a little bit darker. Here, right here. Doesn't have to be the whole length of where you put your floats before. Creating the very deepest shadows on here now. So I'm just going to keep that down there on that very bottom edge where it's kind of setting on itself. And then we want to go all along inside the bowl here. We can kind of walk that up just a little bit, not a lot, because we don't want it to shadow around that stem if you'd like. A little bit darker in here. Need more water. Ooh, that's dark. Alright, I wiped the paint off, so now I'm just using the water to move that paint. Keep it from getting too horribly dark. Wrong end. And I'm going to do it one more time right here because I feel like it needs to be a little darker right there. Just kind of walk that up. Now I'm going to mop it and soften it. Maybe a little bit more because right there is like a line. So I can fix that line there. I'll have to come back and fix that line right there where I removed paint when I add my cherries and stuff in there. So I'm not going to worry too much about that particular part of the shading right now. But here you've got it right here where if you just wanted to leave it pears, you could. But I guess there is one more step we need to do on here. We're going to add our brightest little highlight on these pears, and we're going to use straight Snow White. Okay, we're going to create like a bullseye float on here. That means where you keep the paint in the middle and you just turn the brush. So let me show you that again. Bullseye float. Keeping the toe right there, always where the paint is. And just kind of walk it around. You've got your water edge that's kind of softening that. And then I tap into the whole thing very gently. I don't want to remove the paint. I just want to soften it down in there. So this one we created a back-to-back highlight here, so I'm just going to come down that and tap right into it. So I want to remove some of it, and then up here we'll create a bullseye one up here. This will be the high point. Okay, all of your high points. So like this one here. Bullseye here, and you can come back and repeat this if you know after it dries. If it dries down in there, you feel like it's just not quite bright enough, then you can come back and repeat this step. And I may glaze over these. Okay, this one I'm going to put up here, a good size one. And then, well, you can't see it now because it's really faded down in there. We did a back-to-back float there, so we'll put some of that there. And then this one's going to get a little bit here. Okay, come back on some of these areas and just around this dimple, maybe add a little highlight on there. Well, not in it like that. A little water on my brush here. Go. Put a little bit here. A little bit on that one. Okay, I think I might dot just a dot or two of this white on the stems. Just straight paint. Just in that highlight area. Just add another little sparkle in there. Okay. Now I'm going to try this on one of my pears and see if I even like it. I may not like it at all, but I'm thinking about glazing over them with some cad yellow, which will be mostly water and very little paint. Let me show you how I'm doing this in case I decide I want to do it. I've got a lot of water, not very much paint. It's just like a sheer little glaze, but you want to keep it a little watery so you can try it on this one back here. See how I like that. Now I'm going to mop it. I think that's going to look okay. So let me glaze over these. This will not take our highlight away. You can stay out of your shaded areas if you'd like. It in the mostly yellow areas. Okay, one more. Yeah, I like how that brighten those up a little bit. So that's definitely something that you should probably do. Remember, keep that very sheer. And if you don't think it's bright enough, you can always repeat it. But thinner coats is much better than thicker coats. Alright, we're done with the pears for now. We'll probably come back and add some little color glazes on here later. But I did go back and redo my white highlight just one more time, just to give it that final little bright spot on there. Okay, we want to start working on the bowl down here. And the first thing that I want to start doing is creating some like rusty areas on here. So I'm going to have my liner brush and my one round. And I'm going to start with some, I want these layers to build up on layers, just like we did on the pears. So I'm just going to come in here with some rust. I've got some thin burnt sienna. I'm just going to create some little rusty areas on this bowl. I'm just going to tap them in. It could be a little more rusty along the bottom. Just kind of a tapping and wiggle. My paint is pretty thin, so it won't go on so dark. Okay, so you just kind of vision in your eyes where, if you bought one of these metal bowls or got one of these metal bowls at a flea market, where it might have some rust happening on it. It's definitely going to have more rust along the bottom. Oops. Along the bottoms and the top edges. We'll come in and intensify these, as we build on these layers. So I want some kind of right along the edge there. I think I'll put some along this edge too. push and wiggle it down just a little bit and bring it down. Okay. Now before I add any more rusting onto that, I want to float a little shading along the bottom. This is a washy float. I'm going to use my 12 curved flat. Got a lot of water in my brush, so I'm just creating a little like glaze wash right there. Just have it on the corner of my toe, the toe of my brush. I want to put some of this down here. Try and make sure you keep the shape of your bowl pretty well. Get my mop brush, mop that, soften that up a little bit. I want it to stay very aged looking. Okay, I'm going to put some of this around back over here. This will be kind of the more shadowy area right back in there. I can put some back here going around the bowl a little bit. Don't really want a lot of it right in there, so I'm going to take the damp edge and kind of take that down a little bit. Okay, now I'm going to take some of this soft black with my one round, and again I'm going to make it on the inky side where it's a little on the thin side, and I'm going to put some of this in where some of this rust is. You know, I'm just envisioning this in my mind, you know, what it should look like. I don't really know if the kind of rust stuff I'm creating here is even accurate for rust, but it's kind of what I'm seeing in my mind. Okay. I'm going to come back with a little bit more of the burnt sienna. Okay, maybe make some of these areas just a little bit darker. Not the whole thing, but oops, staying inside the bowl line there. I'm just having a terrible time keeping that paint on the bowl there. I'm going to dirty brush into a little bit of soft black. So that just deepened the rust color. Just tap it in. And I want to maybe create some, you know, more going on here. Maybe not so much dots as actual rust lines. Okay. Get my cool white, a little bit of that on my palette. And I'm going to get a little black because I want to bring this line that I created on the rim here, I need to bring it a little farther around back here. So where it's going back behind this pear here. Fix that. Get that rim on that bowl a little bit better. Okay, that's looking pretty good here. Alright, I want to float along the bottom again with some soft black again. And this time I'm going to mix a tiny bit. I've still got to wash. I mixed a tiny bit of that burnt sienna in with it. So it's like a dirty rust color. this along the bottom. Walk it up just a little bit. Tap into the paint. Soften it out. Okay, let me put a little bit of that back here in this shadowy part back here. Now I want to take my round brush. I'm going to dip into some turquoise blue. I'm going to see how this looks. I want to create some highlights and different things going on the rim here. So yeah, turquoise blue is what I have. I'm using my one round. I've got it flattened out. I don't have very much paint on there, and I'm just barely letting it graze across that paint. Just streaking. It's like a dry brushing just across that blue right there. I'm going to do that again because I want that to be just a little bit brighter on there. Okay. I'm going to wipe the paint off my brush. Don't necessarily have to get it completely out. And then I'm going to go into my cool white and blend it in with that turquoise. We're going to keep this more in the middle right here. On the front, just a dry brush dragging. Okay, and then I will wash my brush out this time and go into straight cool white. In the center here. Create the brightest little highlight right here. Okay. Now I want to take some of the, let's see. We need some more colors down in this bowl down here. So I'm going to take some cool white, and it's going to have a tiny little bit of that turquoise blue in it. You see it right there? It's just got a tiny little dot of that turquoise blue in there. And I want to add some of this in here. I might need more turquoise blue in there. Kind of shade this underneath here. Some blue tints in this bowl. Get that dry. Now I'm going to add some snow white on here. Now I'm going to dry brush the snow white, so you're going to need a scruffy type brush. Okay, make sure it's dry. If it's cool to the touch, it's still wet. Okay, I've got my dry paper towel here, and I've got a 3/8 inch crescent scruffy brush here. These brushes are available on my website. This one's starting to get a little worn, but it still works just perfectly fine. I'm going to dip into my white. So I've got my brush loaded with my white. Now I'm just going to go rub the excess off on the paper towel. I'm going to do that twice so I can build the paint up in my brush. Okay, now I'm going to go right here on my bowl and start dry rubbing in the center of this bowl. Now this is white, so it's going to take a couple times to get it to show up here. You want to give soft pressure, and then more pressure as you can tell how much paint is coming off of your brush. I think Okay, I'm going to extend this highlight over this way a little bit. I had a lot of paint still on my brush there. You probably can't tell as well, but I started rubbing and it left a little bit of a line, so I went with less pressure and blended that out a little bit. Okay, I'm going to do it one more time. So I've almost got like an H here. I've got two long streaks of highlight, and then I'm gently blending them in the middle where they meet. I don't know how well that's translating on the camera. Probably can't see it as well with the reflection of my light. I don't really want to mix cool white in with it, but I might have to for you guys to see it. Still doesn't show up too well on the camera. But that's where our highlight's going to be, right there in the middle. Okay? I want to float on the bottom edge one more time with some soft black. I might add just a dot of black to it. So there it is. I've got a mix of it's soft black with a teeny tiny dot of black, just to make that soft black a little bit darker. So I'm going to set this down at the bottom down here. Back here. And I think I might put this underneath the rim here. Water in my brush. Make that rim look like it's a little deeper. So this is a tight float. I'm up on the toe. You could go to a 6 curve flat. I like to stay with the bigger brush because I don't have to go back and get paint quite as often. One more time. Out that pear. I keep getting it on that pear there. Probably if I had a smaller brush I wouldn't have to worry about that. Like I said, you can go to a smaller brush. This needs to be a little darker back in here. Look out with the wet side of my brush. That bowl's looking pretty good. I think we're going to leave it right there for now. And I'm going to go and transfer some other parts on that we can start painting. Okay, I'm going to transfer the remaining things on my pattern here. I'm just going for the shapes. Go there, stem up here. I'm using a very narrow stylus so that I can keep my lines pretty small. I don't want them, you know, going bigger than what I've got. And if you've got a circle template for the blueberries, you can add that in. I mean, you can put those on with the template. Let's see where I have mine at. So if you've got one of these templates, you can figure out what size you want your blueberry to be. And then you can just take your pencil and draw your blueberries in. That will keep your blueberries. Let's see, that's not a blueberry, that's a raspberry, so it's more oval. This one is a blueberry. So you can kind of keep your circles more precise. You know, a nice round shape on there. Just, I mean, it's not something you have to have. So don't feel like you need to go out and buy a circle template. It's just something that you can, you know, use to help with your circles. Let's see, I've got a couple more blueberries over here. Okay, and these are cherries and these are raspberries. Okay, let's start getting some base coats in on these. So for the cherries, we are going to base coat in with Cad Red. I'm going to use a 3, I think, round brush. Now I wanted to tell you if you have a any type of scruffy brush that you're going to use, and you've only got one, a good one to use, instead of washing it out in your water, because these take quite a while to dry, take some hand sanitizer and clean it out with that, and then wipe the paint out on a dry paper towel. And the hand sanitizer will dry very quickly, and then you can, you know, reuse this on whatever next color you need. So just a tip there to have for your little scruffies, or any brush that you are going to use that you've only got a limited supply of. Okay, I can see right now this Cad Red is not going to cover up as much of that background as I wanted it to. So I am going to mix it with some white. I've just got equal parts of white and Cad Red in my brush. And we'll just use this as an undercoat. I probably could have painted that stem in much later instead of painting it in before I did my cherry, but I'll work around it. So that's a good tip for you. If you're watching this before you paint it, you might want to paint that stem in after you get your cherry done here. Okay, got one here. This is just equal parts white and Cad Red. And we'll come back and base coat in with just Cad Red. Keep your shapes there, not like I just did. You want to try and paint within your lines and not go past your lines. Remember, if you paint over a graphite line, it will become set in your piece. If you're using a light color, you might want to be very aware of your lines. Either erase them back so they're not quite so dark, just so you can just see them, or just paint up to them, so you'll be able, after you get your initial base coat or undercoat on, you can go back and erase them. So I'll have to go back, that first one that I painted, I'll have to go back and touch it up, or rebase coat it, or undercoat it, I guess I should say. I'm just using the 3-round brush, but you can use whatever brush you are most comfortable using. Some streaks in that one, and kind of smooth that out. I think that's all my cherries, so I'm going to get this coat dry and then get our base coat of Cad Red on there. Okay, we're going to start working on our cherries. I got the undercoat on and 1 coat of just cadmium red. So now we're going to start adding some shading to just brighten these cherries up. So I got on my palette Napa Red. So we're going to start adding some reds on here and making these cherries pop. So I'm using a 10 curve flat. I want to try and stay off of my pear, and like what I just did right there. Oh goodness. Red will be a little bit harder to clean up on those light areas, so you want to make sure you stay off of it. This one down here, we're going to darken it up. I think I may just have to come back in and paint that stem back in when I'm done, because there's no way I'm going to stay off of that little stem right there. So I probably won't even worry about it too much. It's not a problem to come back in and repaint that little bitty stem. So Napa Red. Just went and picked up a little bit more paint so I could walk that paint over and just do it by tapping. Oh boy, you're not even on camera. You'd probably like to see what I'm doing, huh? I'm just doing it by tapping the paint edge. Get it off the background. Goodness gracious sakes, Lonna. Red is the one color you want to clean up as quickly as possible. Clean my mop brush so I don't be spreading it around. Okay, let's go down here. Just kind of walk that out a little bit there. Gently mop that. Clean the mop brush. Wet place on the paper towel, then a dry place to dry it. This one down here. Okay, and on this one I also want to put a little bit, to clean my brush out because I've got my paint way too far over on my brush. On this one here, I want to go ahead and create an area like that on here. Gently mop that. Okay, I'm going to add a little bit of this on the side up here. Okay, I want to do that again. Well, before I do that, on this one down here, I want some of this on this side. make sure I've got all of this color every place that I want it to be before I go on to the next step. So let's see. Reloading here. I want a little bit of it over here on this side. Just cleaning that up with my mop brush so it's not quite so far across there. So I can get a little sharper edge there. Mop, mop, mop that. And let's see. So what's up here? Soften it out with the water edge. Touch up on that pear right there. I can take my white eraser, since I've gotten that damp. Take my white eraser and very gently try and rub that red paint off of that pear. There we go. I want to make sure the place has a little bit of water on it when you do that, and very gently, gently rub that. Okay, we're going to deepen this shading on here. We're going to take the Napa Red and some soft black. I'm going to make this Napa Red a little bit more on the rich cherry side. Just a little bit more black, so soft black. Looks like it's going to be about equal amounts of Napa Red and soft black. Okay. Now we want to start applying this. Down here. Walk it in. Gently mop that. Coming back and adding more to that. Lock that in. Gently mop. Keep your shapes nice on your cherries. Okay, gently mop that. Because they're so small, I want to make sure that when I'm mopping, I'm very gently doing that just to soften it. But if I do it too hard or too long, I'm going to remove the paint because it's such a small area where the paint is. Kind of walk that over a little bit. Up into the middle of this one. Turn this way. So I'm going to do this side. I definitely need more water on my brush. I need to spray my palette again because my paint is not wanting to move here. want some on this one coming up because this side over here is kind of in the shadow. So this one's going to be a little bit darker cherry here. Get this shading dry before we move on to doing anything else with these cherries. Okay, I want to deepen the shading on these cherries because I really want these cherries to be cherry looking. So I'm going to go in here. Don't go outside your lines like I just did. Darken up these cherries some more. Just another float of that Napa Red and soft black mix. Very gently, just to soften it. A little far over on my brush, so I needed to wash it out and reload it. I'm just going right over that stem. Not even going to worry about it anymore. This is helping us create more of our highlight area as well. By darkening this the shadowy or the shaded areas, it's helping us create our highlights by keeping that cad red yellow as our first layer of highlight. Just a little bit on this one because I think it needs an initial shading, so it's not quite so bright on that edge right there. Okay, I need to add one more shading on this one. I think it needs to be a little bit richer looking. A little bit of water on my brush. And I want to bring it into the cherry more. Tap it up in there. I like that much better. Okay, this one down here is the only one that's not looking rich cherry enough to me. Let's get this dry so we can intensify those highlights on there. Okay, I finished one cherry down here, a blueberry, and this blackberry. Not quite happy with how that blackberry looks, so I'm going to work on it with the other ones. I've gone ahead and based in the other blueberries with deep periwinkle. And now I'm basing in the remaining blackberries with lamp black. Now when you do your blackberries, I want you to, if you've just drawn an oval shape, I want you to come out away from that oval shape with some bumps, creating your blueberry. And then just fill it in. We'll add all the detail stuff in when we go to finish it. And then, oops, on color paint. Then when you've gotten everything finished base coated in, erase all of your graphite lines except for the stems for your cherries. And if you haven't added those in yet, go ahead and add that pattern line in. And we're going to come back and we're going to finish up the cherries first, and then work on the blueberries and then the blackberries. Okay, let's get busy on our cherries here. We're going to add our highlights. Oops, let's get you close, not far away. Okay, so I'm going to work on these cherries down here. We're going to highlight with Tangelo Orange. I'm going to get my 6 curved flat and use that one. So our first highlight's going to be with Tangelo Orange. So you're just going to kind of dab that on in the high spot of your cherry. Just kind of walk it out a little bit. My mop brush. Gently soften that. Work on this one. This one's got its highlight more right here. So I'm just going to kind of dab that on right there. Chance for those to dry before I go into my next color. I'll come up here to this one. A little bit too much water on my brush there. And we'll put some of this orange on here. Create its highest highlight there. And this one here. A little dibby dabby. You don't have to stress out too much about these highlights. Okay, our next color is going to be cool white, and we're going to make our highlight just a little bit smaller than the one that we just did. And if you feel like your orange faded back down in there too much, so I'm going to show you what to do if you feel like your orange faded back down in there too much. Get as much water as you can out of your paint, out of your brush, and pick up some more paint and just add a little bit more on there. I do feel like a couple of these faded back in there just a little bit. Okay, we'll just darken those up just a little bit. Especially this one here, it really kind of faded down in there. Okay, so we've got our first little highlight on there. Now we want to pick up the cool white on our brush, and we're going to make our highlight a little bit smaller. On here. So we're just going to come inside that orange just a little bit. I'm going to get my smaller mop brush here. Oh, it'd be good if you were more centered on camera. And I'm going to go right in that and soften it. Okay, this is just a little bit smaller. This is cool white. Your highlights will get smaller and smaller with each one that you do. So you won't fill in where all of that original, your first, I can't even talk this morning, your first highlight of Tangelo Orange, you will not fill all of that in. Okay, wash your brush out, and you're going to get just a little bit of Snow White. And we'll go just a little bit smaller. This can be, you know, just like a little dot in there. It's amazing how I painted finished this other cherry yesterday. So it's a new day for me. How different you paint from day to day. So you can take your mop brush and soften that back. Now we're going to mix up some cherry red. We're going to thin it down, make a little glaze with it. So we're just going to create a little glaze. I'll make a little puddle here since I have 4 cherries to do. Okay, we want to keep this in the red areas. We're going to glaze over this. We want to stay out of our highlight. Try and stay off your blueberry as well. Okay, do this one up here. Oops. Got all over that blueberry. Just take that off with a damp brush. Okay, I'm going to get my smaller mop brush here. Mop that out. Clean my brush off. Mop, mop, mop. Clean, clean, clean. That's how we do our mop brushes. Okay, we want to make sure that is dry, and then we're going to float a final little shading on here of soft black, or not soft black, I think it's lamp black. Let's see what I did. Okay, I did black, lamp black, so let me get that on my palette here. And we'll keep this kind of washy. So we'll dip in. I just got a tiny little bit on my brush. I've got a lot of water, so I'm gonna go wipe. I'm gonna lay my brush down on the paper towel this way and then this way. That gets all the excess water out of it. And I'm going to go right back here and load it up a little bit more. Okay. Now we're just going to put this in the darkest places, like right here next to this one. This one down here. Just kind of walk that up, soften that. I want to put a little bit down in here. I'll come back and probably repeat that. When I put the stem in, I want to make sure that's nice and dark down there. Okay, let's go around this one. Now you can go to a smaller, I'm up on the toe here because I've got a bigger brush, but if you are going, you know, you can go to a smaller brush and that will help out keeping you from getting it on your other fruit. Okay, just darken that right there. Okay, and then this one on this side, need a little bit more water. Been on camera for that one, huh? This one's got a little hard edge here, so I'm going to take the water side, soften that back. Okay, now see how it made those cherries just pop, pop, pop? Just brought those cherries to life, I think. A little bit more on that one. Needs just a tad bit. Okay, let's finish our cherries by doing our stems. You're going to need your 10O liner. mop brushes out here. You're going to need your foliage green, some soft black, cad yellow, white, foliage green, cad yellow, soft black. You've already got white on your palette, a little bit of cocoa, soft black here. Okay, you're going to start with your foliage green, inky consistency with your 10-0 liner, which means you add paint or water to your paint, pull it out until it's inky consistency so it will flow nicely from your brush. Okay, then you're just going to pick your stem. I'll do this one here because I can get it on camera the best. Okay, these stems are pretty, they're not fat, so stay up on the tip of your brush and pull that stem out. You can go all the way to there. You don't have to go all the way to the very end. I'll just go ahead and do these other ones, give that one a chance to dry a little bit. So this one is coming out right here. And this one. I might wait on that one because I might want to take it across that berry a little bit. So let's go up here and do this one. Been good if you'd been on camera for that one, right? I didn't hear any yelling, man. Okay, and you can go back and repeat that if you feel like it's not quite as bright as you want it to be. Okay, now we're going to dip our brush into some cad yellow. We'll just go straight paint here. We don't need to thin it down. We're going to put some of this yellow up here on the tip here. I don't know how well it will show up on top of this pear. Some up here. The end of the cherries are kind of fat, so we're going to come in and add some cocoa in here. So right now we're just doing a little bit on the ends. Yellow. Okay, I'm just going to wipe my brush off. I'm not going to clean it. I'm going to go into my cocoa and I'm going to put that right on the very tip, kind of pull it into that yellow a little bit. Turn it around this way because it will be easier for me to pull towards me. We're going to make that little fat part of the end of the stem. Bring it around. Okay, now I'm going to go into soft black. I am not cleaning my brush, I'm just going straight into that soft black. I'm going to pull a little bit of this up at the base of the cherry. And I'm just going to streak it up a little bit on this outer edge. From the base, we're pulling up. It's much easier to pull toward you, so that's why I have it turned this way. So I know it's kind of upside down and cattywampus for you, but here, pull a little bit along the bottom here. Okay, now we're going to take the white. Gonna add some highlight on here. Just do straight paint on your brush. Just a little dibby dab, a couple of dots, a little streak. You know, a little bit on the tip of that stem. Okay, let's do this one down here. take my six curved flat. I'm going to get a tiny little bit of soft black. Actually, I think I'll get lamp black and put it down here in the deep part of the cherry where the stem comes in. I'll have to come back and do that one. I've got enough paint on my brush there. You want pretty much straight paint here. You don't really want much water in your brush. Set that stem down in there. Give it something to attach to right there. Okay, maybe a little bit darker here. Okay, I think that finishes out our cherries nicely. They look pretty good. Let me wide angle out and you can see them at a distance. See how delicious those cherries look. Delicious. All right, let's move on. We're going to create some shadows and stuff in here around the cherries and stuff later, and all the other fruit. So we're going to move on to our blueberries. All right, with the blueberries, we're going to shade with Deep Midnight Blue. And I've got lamp black on my palette because I will probably need that. We need Blue Harbor and Cool White. Okay, we're going to use a round brush to do this. Actually, we're going to start with a flat brush, and then we're going to go to our curved flat, and then we're going to go to a round brush. Find my 3 round. There it is. I used a 10 curved flat on this one when I did it, but you can go to a 6. So, I'm going to zoom in. I've already got these two shaded once, so I'm going to go over here and shade these two. We're going to go with Deep Midnight Blue. Some water here on my palette. Shading. Deep Midnight Blue. Just load your brush like we've loaded it for all the other floating. We're going to put a little bit at the bottom of these blueberries. Get my small brush, whatever I did with it. Okay. Do down here on the bottom of this one. And I think this one I might have turned just a little bit, so I'm going to put the darkest areas over here because we're going to put the top of the blueberry over here. So gently mop that. Let's see, this one. Which way do I want that blueberry? Okay, this one down here, I think I want the top of the blueberry to be over here. So I'm going to put my shading right there. This one I think. Not quite sure where I want the top of this one to be, so I'll just go with the dark color down here. Gently soften that. Okay, up here. This one will get pretty dark because it's underneath this one here. I was kind of up on the toe with that because I'm using a fairly big brush, so if you're using a small one, you adjust to the size of the brush that you're using. Gently mop that. I'll do this one up here. When you're floating, you're using soft pressure. Where you can lay the brush flat, lay it flat. If you can't lay it flat, then, still give soft pressure when you're floating. Okay. I think I will do this. Well, no, I won't. I was going to shade again, but I'm not going to because, excuse me, I'm going to come back at the end and add a little bit. Okay, now we're going to use our round brush. And the first thing that you want to do, okay, I'm going to do this one over here, since it's all in the front, is I just dampen that with some water. Okay, I'm going to pick up my first color, which is going to be Blue Harbor. I just touch that back because there was just a little bit too much water in there. And I'm just going to dab this, dot it in there. Now I'm going to wipe the excess paint off my brush and go into some cool white. And I'm going to dab that up in here. Wipe my brush off, go into some deep midnight blue. I'm going to dab that down here. And some up in here. Now I'm going to wipe all the paint off my brush, and then I'm just going to go in here and gently dab and kind of blend these colors. If I feel like I'm picking up a lot of paint on my brush, I will go wipe it off on my paper towel. And then I'm just going to continue to just dab, dab, and blend these. Okay, and you just dab and blend them out. Okay, and we will do each blueberry one at a time. Dampen it, give that one a chance to dry. We go into our Blue Harbor. We dab that into the center. I don't think that's Blue Harbor. I think that's Periwinkle. So that's why my color didn't quite look right. We'll go into Blue Harbor. That will make a difference. Maybe that is Blue Harbor. Can't really tell now. Alright, we're going to dab that in, wipe it off. Cool white. That up here. Okay, wipe it off. Deep midnight blue. Dab, dab, dab. Oops, not too much paint there. Dab, dab, dab. Dab some up here. Okay, now wipe the paint off and then go in and gently blend these. Get a little bit more cool white. I want a little bit more white on there. So I added some, wiped it off, and now I'm just gently dabbing. As I get paint built up on my brush, I'm going to wipe it off. Now I'm just going down to gently blend this down here. Wipe the paint off. Okay, this is how we create our blueberry look. We'll get to this. We've got a couple more steps to do, but this is our initial first step on here. So I'm going to go finish all of my other blueberries with this same technique. Dampen it. Blue Harbor, cool white, deep periwinkle blue. Wipe the brush off, blend, wipe off as you go to keep too much paint building up on your brush. Okay, I've got the first modeling coat on the blueberries. Now, we want these blueberries to look as real as we can get them to look. So I want you to repeat that step on every one of them so that you can create that nice little modeled look on each one of these blueberries. I know that sometimes you repeat steps, you know, a couple of times and it can be tedious, but trust me, when you do this, it makes your piece look so much more realistic when you can get those layers built up on there and create that realistic look. So I want you to go back and do each one of the blueberries again the same way, and then we'll come back and finish them out. They're so small, it takes very little time to do, and it's just a dabbing. So it's something real easy that you don't need to stress over in any way. So let's go get that second coat of modeling on our blueberries. Okay, I want to add a final little highlight on these with just some Snow White, just using the 10-0 liner, just kind of tapping it on there. That one I'm not going to add a second one to, just in its brightest, in their brightest spots. Just a little dibby dabby. Okay, now we want to shade the bottoms with lamp black. So in our dark areas here, I'm just going to wash in some lamp black in the center of the berry and in the dark parts, the shaded parts. A little bit in the middle. This is lamp black. And then this will finish up our blueberries. And we'll be ready to move on to our blackberries. Getting close to being done with this one. You're going to put this in your darkest areas where you put your dark blue. Okay. Okay, and let's do some glazing here. On my blueberries, I want to glaze some deep midnight blue. So just create a wash and glaze right over each one of your blueberries. Pick up your cherry there. This is going to be, as with all of our other glazes, it's about 90 to 95% water. Just a little bit of paint in there. This is that deep midnight blue. Okay, I'm trying something different on this berry. So, I've put all my color on the upper side of it. So now I'm taking the lamp black and I'm putting it on the opposite side. I don't need it right there because my blueberry comes up on that one. This is straight paint, just a little bit of paint on this toe of this. I'm staying up on the toe as much as possible. I don't want to fill each one of these little sections on this berry full, but I wanted it more shaded on there. Okay, now I'm going to come back. I put my purple colors on there. Now I'm going to come back with a lighter purple here, a deep periwinkle. And I'm going to highlight a little bit on this one. I'm doing less and less with each color so as not to take over. Okay, I'm going to wipe my brush out. I'm going to go into a little bit of Blue Harbor. highest points are starting now. And then I'm going to go into cool white. I just wipe the paint out of my brush. And I'm going to do even less of this color. Now Snow White. And my brightest highlight's going to be on these right here. Okay, so those are my highest points there. Now, the thing that I changed, other than floating the black on each side of these, was instead of outlining with the black, I'm going to outline with a little bit of cool white. Okay, to separate these sections a little bit, I'm going to do it on the light side. White. And we're going to go in and erase our graphite lines and see how this looks. I just felt like on the other ones all of the sections were all blending together, so when we erase our graphite lines we'll be able to see if we've got our sections showing up a little bit more on here. So I just outlined a few of those. That was with cool white. You see, I didn't go all the way too close to the bottom with them. So let's start erasing our graphite lines in here. See how this looks. Okay, I like that so much better. So now I want to shade between the blueberry and the blackberry with lamp black. And I think I got all my instructions on my written instructions changed, so hopefully it will be correct. And now I will go back and paint these. I'm going to go back and paint these two in with my lamp black base and repaint them like this one up here, because I like the way that this one looks much better. I got a picture of a blackberry and was really studying it, looking at it, trying to figure out what I needed to do. So then I just shaded right there at the base next to that blueberry to darken that up a little bit. Okay. So now I'm going to go over here and do these. I'm going to work on one of these, this one in the front right here, just to show you. The only thing that I changed was the black floating. So we start out with two ultra blue deep, and then we get one dioxazine purple and two lavenders in our mix. And I just brush mix because we need such a small amount of paint. Okay, now my lighter sides are going to be up here on this side. So let me turn it this way. Keep it on camera. So I want all of this color to be at the top of these little circle sections. Okay, go back and add a little bit more lavender into that. Lighten it up. This is a lot of layering. This is how you get your depth in here. It's very important to not miss a step, or you're not going to create the look that you want. Okay, I wiped the paint off my brush. Now I went and picked up some what I picked up, deep periwinkle, and added that to my mix. Okay. I'll start doing less and less of these little sections with each color. I didn't go all the way to the bottom. Now I'm going to pick up a little bit of Blue Harbor and mix that in with my mix. And I'm going to keep this up here at the top. Okay. Now I want to go into Lamp black, straight paint on your 6 curve flat, or if you're using an angle brush, you can use a 1/8 inch angle brush. Probably would be good for these really small, tight sections here. We're putting this on the lower parts of these sections, and you're not even on camera, so you probably didn't see it. Look at that. Okay, just on the lower, each one of these little sections. Okay, so we're starting to get a little bit of depth in there. Okay, now we want to start highlighting. I'm going to take Blue Harbor and Cool White. I think that's what I started with. I'm not 100% sure. Blue Harbor and Cool White. And we're going to start highlighting some of these little sections here. Okay, now I'm going to wipe my brush off. I'm going to go into straight Cool White. Just kept it on those few right there. Now I'm going to go into Snow White. Do a final little highlight right there on my brightest area. Okay, then we take our 10-0 liner brush with our Cool White. Okay, we're going to outline on the light sides of these, define these a little bit more. To erase my graphite lines. See exactly where our lines are that we put on there, and then I'm going to float matte black along the bottom behind this. Put on camera here. I moved my camera a while ago. I see I'm going to have to readjust it back. Just along the bottom of this berry right here. Okay. Darken that. Okay, let me zoom out. So now you can see the first 2 berries I did do not look very well, but these 2 berries, they look more like real berries. So I'm going to paint these back in with matte black and start over and finish this one over here, and then we're going to add the finishing details onto this project. Okay, got all the berries done. Now we're going to do a little bit of refining on some of our shading here. So on the bottom of this bowl, I want it to definitely be a little bit darker. So I'm going to go in with some soft black, a little bit of lamp black in with it. Create a nice little washy float, a sheer float. Go around that berry. Beside this pear. Walk that up over here as well. Take my mop brush and mop that and soften it all. I had plenty of water on my brush, so I was able to move that float for quite a ways. So down in here, let me zoom you in just a little bit. We got to start defining our darkest areas. So I'm going to go with some more soft black or lamp black on my brush this time. I want to get some darker shadows right here. Need more water. wet. So I went and wiped my brush off because I had a lot of water coming up there. Clean this edge right here off. Okay, I'm going to go into some soft black. A little washy float of that. On the bottom of this pear, it needs to be darker. We're going to create all of our deepest, darkest areas right now, and then we're going to go in and shade underneath and around things to really set them. Okay, I've got a 12 curve flat here, but you could go definitely with something smaller if you'd like. That really needs to be dark back in there. I'm up on the toe. Just blend that out a little bit with my finger. Up on the toe of my brush. This is soft black. It's pretty washy. Around. That's pretty dark right there. So now I'm going to mop that just a little bit. Soften it out. Okay, I want to go around this cherry. Create a little bit of a shadow there. Oops, my brush. I might have to move down to a smaller size brush to do that because I don't want my float to come out, my shading to come out so far. So while I still have this big one, I'm still just using soft black. Darken this here. Water and definitely more paint here. All the way to here with that. And around the whole way to the bowl here. Okay, now I'm going to soften all of that. Very gently. It's going to set all that stuff back behind. I want that to be a little bit darker there. Okay. Now I'm going to go behind this berry here, kind of give it a little bit of shadow. And that berry. Okay, around this cherry here. Continuing just with soft black here. Definitely need to go to a smaller brush here. So let me go get my 10 curved flat. Okay, it woke up. Okay, I'm going to go a little bit of lamp black first. So all these areas right here, just at the base of these stems, I want those to be a little bit darker. I'm just going to wipe the paint off and go into some soft black, some water. Pick the water up on the water edge, soft black on the toe. Okay, so I'm going to shade around this one here a little bit. Not too much because we're going to create some shadows coming down here. I want to deepen this shading underneath the rim of the bowl. Some shadows underneath this stuff down here. So like the stem of this cherry right here. So I'm going to put the toe right there and create a little bit of a shadow. And I'm going to create some shadow on this side. I'm away from the cherry stem. And I'll create a little bit of a shadow down here. I may come back in and change that because I want all kinds of shadows and things back in and around this. So before I continue doing that, I'm going to go back in here and with the toe of my brush, I'm just going to push some soft black into this dark area right here. I've got plenty of water and paint on my brush so I can put the paint in there, and then I can take the water edge and kind of soften it back in there. And more soft black on my brush. Want some shadow areas here around this fruit. Using the top of my brush here. Soft black and water. My brush, it's a washy float. Okay, and our shelf line is kind of right there. Come back with lamp black in the darkest areas and put that in here. So I'm just putting some paint in, kind of moving it around with the water edge of my brush there. Paint and water as you run out. Shadows and all kinds of fun stuff under these. Every time I'm not painting, I'm loading my brush with water and paint. Okay, here's our line here. So we're starting to get it set on something. Not just floating in midair here. Stop the table from spinning here. Okay. I'm not going to worry about washing my brush. I'm going to go into some lamp black. Create a little thin wash of this as well. And we need to push this back into our darkest areas. And keep it off of our stem there. We can come back and paint our stem back in if we need to. So this is a really dark area here. Let me get up on my toe so I can really push that in there. Water. Here. Just kind of like where two pieces of fruit will meet or be touching. You want to darken that, and then I'm going to put a little bit of this black on top of this one here, because it's shadowed by that one up there. Okay. Same here. I want to get some shadow on this berry here, and then on this cherry right here. This is with lamp black. Load some more on my brush and create some more shadow, some deeper shading. Okay, so like where these two come together right here, that's going to be super dark back up in there. So I just push some lamp black with the toe of my brush up in there, and then just took the water edge and softened it out a little bit. Same over here. Around here. Berries, then kind of pull it out. I need this underneath this pear right here to get a little darker. I'm doing this kind of shading or shadowing, I like to just use my finger to soften it back. I just feel like I get a little bit better effect that way. Back up in here needs to be quite a bit darker. Okay, that one I'm going to use the mop brush. Coming out here. Doesn't have to be too dark on that edge. Okay. I need to define this pear shape here a little bit better. Just do that with the black. And I think our step back and look at it a little bit. A little bit cherry, I think. Around here. Around this stem. Okay, a little bit next to this stem. Create a little bit of a shadow there. This one as well. I'm up on the very tippy toe. You can go to a much smaller brush if you need to. There. Don't forget this one up here. Shadow around that stem. Still with lamp black. Just kind of look at it and see all the places it looks like it needs to be a little bit darker. Need more water. That put way too much paint down on there. So I just touch that back with my finger. Okay, I think I see one more place. I need to get a better shadow. And that's right here with this cherry. Just a tad darker there. very little water. Very gently about that, just to blend it. I don't want to remove any of that. I think most of the shadows are looking pretty good. I'm just looking at it to make sure there isn't someplace else that I need to bring more shadow around. Alright, I want to brighten up a couple highlights on here. So, take my round brush. Where did I find it? Okay, I'm going to go with Snow White. Get some of that out. Want to dot some of this color and really intensify some of these brightest areas just by putting little dibby-dab dots on there. Dots all down. Excuse me. About covered up that stem. I have to add a little green to it maybe. Where you have your highlight, you're just dabbing a little bit of this white on there. So we can see this. That's looking pretty good. Okay, now I'm going to antique around the edges. I'm going to get a large brush for that. I'm going to use a flat brush. I've got a 1-inch flat brush, so I really want to wake that baby up. We are going to use soft black. Now, this is an option. You do not have to do this. You know, if you like it just like this, or if, you know, you've painted your background a different color or whatever, you know, if you didn't do this antiquing look on it. Just leave it, but I want to first, because this is a big area, I'm going to pre-dampen it with some water. I'll go down to about there. I am loading my brush with soft black, just on one corner of that flat brush. Okay, so I've got my water on here, so I can start putting my paint on and moving it. Get more paint as I need it. The water gives you plenty of time to work it. I'm going to take my mop brush and gently mop that just a little bit. Not much. There's still a lot of water in there, so I don't want to remove my paint. Okay, we're going to bring that in a little bit more. I think I've got enough water in my brush. I can move this around this piece okay. Water there. So let me pre-dampen. Oops, wrong side. Paint on my fingers, so I just put it right down on there. Okay, reload the brush here. Try this again. Dampen. See if I can go all the way across this. I don't think I got all of my paper off right there. That edge seems pretty rough. That means I didn't get all my paper off. And I'm not going to worry about it now, since I'm finishing this up. I'm just going to leave it. I don't think it will hurt anything. Just blending this out and around the corners a little bit more, kind of bringing it in. Being very careful, because if it's not dry, I will remove what I've already put on there. See one place up here where I removed the paint, so I'm going to have to let it dry and go back and fix that. And you can bring this in as far as you want on this piece. I just think this was a pretty fun little project to do. I'm going to try this corner up here so I can put my paint back up there. So this is my fruit medley, is what I'm titling this piece, I think. It's a learning experience for me on painting blackberries, because I've never done that before. Soften that so I don't accidentally go back and remove my paint. A little bit here on this corner. I can call this piece pretty done here. Okay, you'll want to varnish it with 2 coats of matte varnish. And there we go, we've got our fruit medley. Thanks for painting with me. Okay, I thought I was done with this, but I want to add one more thing to it. A little bit of wash of Napa Red, very sheer color. I want to put this on some reds. Oh, I'll zoom in so you can see that a little bit better. A little bit of glazing of reds on here, not much. Just taking my finger and blending it out. I'll do the mop brush with that one because that's a little bit wetter and I don't want to remove all of that with my finger. So, you won't see a whole lot of this because it will fade back down in there, but you'll have a little bit of peak of red in here. A little bit more on that one. So just 2 or 3 of them. And just softly blend it out. Dampen it if you get a sharp edge. Sharp edge up here. And there we go, a little kiss of red on there. Carry that red on around a little bit. I might put just a little kiss of it in here. It's not really going to show up in there. I think that looks pretty good.